Herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Podcast-Folge aus der Kölner Philharmonie. Ich bin Katherina Knees und heute nehmen wir eine ganz besondere Folge auf, nämlich unsere erste Folge auf Englisch. So, I will do my best to welcome my guest, because I'm so happy to talk to him in person, and I'm sure my German accent will underline his lovely British English. My guest is a conductor who has made his appearance in front of many big orchestras. In April, he will be in Cologne for 2 concerts in the Kölner Philharmonie, and there's so much more to talk about. A warm welcome, Duncan Ward.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, last night, obviously, I was so excited to talk to you today that I dreamt I would get the time wrong and be too late to the recording. But as you can see, luckily, we're both here.
Phew, we made it.
And do you know that yourself, this mix of joy and excitement before a concert? Do you sometimes dream something bad yourself?
Sometimes bad, sometimes good. Certainly, yeah. If you're deep in a project, the dreams can be very active. I can find myself even carrying out another rehearsal in the night, apparently even sometimes physically waving, but certainly talking about things, and the music's always playing in your mind. Of course, there's also the classic panic dream of turning up on stage without any clothes on. That's another...
Really? You've had that?
Yes. It didn't actually happen. That was the dream. Yeah, certainly... There's a lot of emotions involved in performing and being on stage, and this translates to every time of the day before then.
And in real life, do you have lots of excitement before a concert, or are you always like calm and looking forward to going on stage?
To be honest, in concert, actually on stage is some of the calmest I ever feel. Somehow for me, the much scarier is the first rehearsal of every project, in particular the first 10 minutes or so of that. And I've talked to much older famous musicians or conductors who have told me that never changes. You know, it doesn't matter how well you know an orchestra, it doesn't matter how well you know a piece, how well you know a hall. Somehow the beginning of a project is always terrifying. And somehow then the work you do for us is very intense in the rehearsals, and that can be hard or a more joyful feeling depending on how it's going. But I love this moment of just letting go in the concert, because suddenly there's nothing you need to do to worry about fixing it, or what can I improve, or how shall I work on this next. You just need to let the music fly, and if something goes wrong, doesn't matter, you're in the next bit already, and the overall story of the music that you're telling and the connection between the musicians and with the public is the thing that counts.
So when you get to know a new orchestra, when you meet the musicians for the first time, what is most important for you to let them know? When you go there and you stand in front of all these musicians, I guess sometimes it's scary because there are so many different personalities in an orchestra, and then you come along and you're the new one. Or how do you do it for the first time when you meet the musicians?
You know, it's always different. As you say, there's many different personalities within an orchestra. Also, every orchestra, I think, has a different personality. And you could do all the research in the world and you would never quite be prepared for what that will be like. And yeah, there's 100 or so probably people looking at you and very quickly making up their mind whether they like you or not. And you have to be totally unfazed by that. And very quickly try to kind of suss up the energy of the room and what they give back when you give something to them, and the way they react when you say something, or hopefully don't say too much, how they react to what you're showing physically when you're conducting. And those first minutes of music making are always very insightful. It can go in many different directions, and it also doesn't matter if the beginning of the music making sounds terrible or is a bit of a car crash. Sometimes the greatest relationships can be forged by that being the case, and then you sorting it out either over the course of the next minutes or maybe over the course of the whole week if it's something extremely challenging. There are many sort of ways it can go, but it's very important to not to come with a sort of a recipe. And actually in your question you said what's important to let them know, and I think actually it's not let them know, it's more of a dialogue than that. It's finding out the way that you can work together best and adapting what you do to make the best from that situation.
So you're the chief conductor of the Zuid-Nederland Philharmonie. How was the start with your orchestra? When you got to know them, did you feel directly, this is my orchestra? How was your beginning?
I certainly didn't think suddenly this is my orchestra, and in fact I had no idea that they were looking for a new chief conductor. It was quite exciting. It was not quite a jump in because it wasn't exactly the night before, but it was a sort of step in. I had about a week's notice and I joined the concert, and it was a beautiful program, including Debussy's Jeu, which is kind of one of my favorite pieces and one of the perhaps hardest pieces there are to conduct and to perform as an orchestra. It's really one of those elusively virtuosic, really sort of test pieces for everyone. It's very difficult to pull off, and I'd had experience with a couple of other more famous orchestras, frankly, with that piece before, and it had been a real struggle. It had been hard work, and it'd been pretty good in the end. But with the South Netherlands Philharmonie Zuid-Nederland, I immediately sensed that they get this music. They somehow had it in their blood. It's not that everything was perfect at all at the beginning, but the rate of progress was so quick. They were so responsive and so open and keen to everything I had to suggest. And the same for the Wagner we were doing, the same for the Mendelssohn we were doing. I felt, wow, this is a exciting and dynamic place to work. A really nice group of people who were just so keen to make music and so keen to make it better. I really was, very impressed, and had wonderful concerts, including in the Concertgebouw. And it was only then after that they said, well, actually we need to be looking for a chief conductor, and well, what do you think? What's your sort of next steps at this time, and might you be interested? So, yeah.
And then you said yes.
Something like that.
How do you decide these next steps? Do you decide spontaneously? Do you think a lot about the future and your next steps?
It's a combination. It's a funny world of classical music that most things are planned years in advance. It's sometimes easier to say what program you're doing in like 3 years than it is in a couple of months. It's weird the way that is. So in a way, you have to always be dreaming of the next step and negotiating future plans. Negotiating sounds very business time, but inventing the programs and be exciting about sort of planning your future years. And at the same time, I think we have to be spontaneous as musicians. And frankly, it was a quite exciting thing during the pandemic that lots of things were sort of torn up, which was terrible, but it also left flexibility for things suddenly to pop up for next week. Oh, nobody's doing anything there. Oh, would you mind? Oh, great, there was a sort of charm about that, actually. I think it's also relevant to the question that I think every every year I've done things I didn't dream that I would be doing the previous year, even if they were planned far ahead. And it's been a bit like that since I started my musical journey. I don't come from a classical music background. I don't have a family of musicians. So it was always sort of my passion and my discovery and my own adventure. In a way, nothing was sort of pre-planned. And though I've always had dreams of what could happen, I don't meticulously calculate, oh yeah, I must do this as the next step and whatever. I'm super happy to go with the flow.
But let's talk about your first steps in music. It's interesting that you don't come from a musical family, but somehow you've had to realize that it's not just a fling with the music, but it's a real serious relationship. When did you realize that?
I guess fairly quickly. So it's quite a large family. I have 3 older sisters and 1 younger brother, and one of my sisters was bought a electronic keyboard, little silly thing, little toy really, as a random Christmas present when I was about 7. And I was totally fascinated with this thing and gave it a lot more attention than anyone else in the family, and was trying to sort of pick out by ear the melodies I knew from nursery rhymes or I don't know, things I'd heard on CD or things I'd danced to as a kid or whatever. And that progressed quite quickly to me also wanting to sort of compose my own melodies and offer people like my grandparents a little present or something. Here's a tune I've written for you. Da, da, da. And my parents thought, well, maybe would like to have some lessons. So we found a teacher in the local school I would go to, and I learned how to read the music, and therefore I could write it too. So then these little compositions could be written down, and I just loved this. I spent so many hours after school doing it and progressed very quickly, and the composing got more serious too. So when I moved on to my secondary school, aged 11, I was a bit obsessed, with jazz at that time, but also with musicals, musical theatre. And I decided in my summer holiday I would compose my own musical on Alice in Wonderland. And I've spent most of the summer doing this. And when I got back to school in September, I showed it to my teacher, and he flicked through and thought, well, actually, this looks quite good. I don't have any more time for it, but Duncan, if you want to perform it, go for it, And I thought, okay, if you say so. So I took sort of went to the choir and started rehearsing with them some of the numbers. I mean, it was about 2 hours of music. It was quite serious, this thing. And put together orchestra, big band of musicians within the school. Someone had to conduct. Well, that was me. I auditioned my academic teachers as the soloists. Fired the deputy head because he was always going a bit flat, that was my first conducting experience, was putting this thing, and I never questioned was this the right thing to be doing or a normal thing to be doing. I just did it, I was very passionate about doing it. Has to be said, until the very end, and by the time we actually performed it, after a sort of year of rehearsals, I felt like I could write something so much better now because I've learned so much. We should just cancel it. And I really remember saying to the teacher and to my parents too, like, no, but really, and I'm really glad they said, no, Duncan, you will still learn another whole thing from doing the actual concert and seeing the feedback of what that is. And to be honest, I've done all those things ever since, as well as further conducting my pieces. It was then friends' pieces. I got more into classical music. I started learning the French horn as well, chamber music, was in the National Youth Orchestra, won some sort of national composing competitions, and everything sort of just steadily got more serious, and I grew more and more fascinated about so many different styles of music.
And do you still compose today, or don't you have time for that anymore?
It's very hard to find the time. I still get quite a lot of people interested in commissions and things, but it's very rare now that I do it.
And it all sounds so playful. Did you manage to keep this spirit in your professional life nowadays?
I guess so, yeah. I think I often pinch myself and think, is it really a job, you know? Like, what a privilege to have a profession that is to learn this incredible music, choose this incredible music, travel around the world, meeting all sorts of wonderful people, give these concerts, which is such a sort of privilege and an emotional feeling, discover these parts of the world and their cultures and their food and their landscapes. It's really a massive joy a lot of the time. It's very hard work as well, can be extremely stressful, but definitely there's a lot that's playful about it.
And who or what has influenced you the most? Was it a special teacher, somebody, a piece, or a special occasion, a concert? What has influenced you that you look back to and are mostly grateful?
I think this head of music, lovely man teacher in my secondary school that, encouraged me in that way, gave me that just initial, you go for it, Duncan, just the sort of trigger of support and confidence was totally exceptional. He was an amazing man called Simon Hayward, a trombonist, and just a really warm, guiding, encouraging figure. It's nobody particularly famous, but it was a crucial step. I've had other very lucky mentors and lucky inspirations, including another chapter of my musical life, which is in India. I've travelled first there when I was 16 in the summer holiday. Again, good things happen in summer holidays. And I was teaching piano first in Kerala, in the southernmost state, in various music schools, and ended up, through a long story, quite quickly founding a musical charity, an organisation back in the UK to organise and support musicians to travel in both directions, musicians going and helping in schools and orphanages all around India, and then musicians coming to the UK. And through this, I had the incredible luck to meet the great late sitar player Ravi Shankar, who met me and one day announced that he wanted to teach me. He was 90, I was 20, and I could spend a summer, just the two of us together, learning something about the Indian ragas and rhythms and all this another universe of Indian classical music. He was a very key figure for me too, personally. I mean, he was sort of guru and father and grandfather and best friend, and was very special. And conducting wise, I suppose I owe a lot also to Simon Rattle, who I was extremely lucky. He heard about what I was doing in my early 20s when I first started to have contact with professional orchestras, and quickly invited me to Berlin and created a new post for me there at the Berliner Philharmonie as the first conducting scholar or Dirigent academist. Yeah.
Wow, that's a long way when we look at your age. Would you love to be a figure like that, like Simon Rattle or Ravi Shankar, for some young students yourself? You not only are the chief conductor of the Philharmonie Zuid-Nederland, but you're also the music director of the Mediterranean Youth Orchestra that belongs to the big festival in Aix-en-Provence. What do you like about conducting such a young orchestra?
It's an incredible energy that you get back because these young, curious, eager, passionate musicians, on the whole, have never played in that size or that quality of an orchestra. Normally they won't have played the piece that you're about to play ever before. So there are the sort of potential preconceptions or even sometimes sleepiness you can get in older musicians who may have done a certain piece many times before. None of that is there. There's just this sheer hunger and yes, we're playing together. And this is an amazing opportunity to work with that. This is a really special and quite unique orchestra too, I think, to have musicians from all around the Mediterranean basin, including the African and Middle Eastern side, all 22 countries. So you have an incredibly diverse group of people, so many different languages and cultures coming together. Somehow with this shared Mediterranean spirit. It's hard to define what that is, where it comes from. I don't know, sunshine, olive oil. It's somehow there. And what we've been doing most recently, other than some very interesting existing concert repertoire, is developing a piece totally from scratch from their sort of native folk traditions, and making a piece orally without any written sheet music through their musical exchange and ideas. So 10 minutes of our program last summer didn't exist when the week started, and by the end of the week this incredibly powerful new piece of music had been created by these young people themselves, which involved several different languages, and it was an absolute hit. I mean, this was the second piece on our program, and the audiences in southern France don't seem to come on their feet very often, but I mean, this got a standing ovation every night, for a really extended. People were so moved by this, the sort of power of these young people's creativity. Very special.
Wow. And do you see yourself in them when you're together with the young musicians? Do you think back?
Definitely. In fact, I have to remind myself that I'm not their age. I still feel, I mean, yeah. Everywhere you go, people say, aren't you a bit young to be a conductor? And you have to remind people that all the grey-haired conductors were young once. But I also have to remind myself that I'm actually already 13 or 15 years older than most of the young people in this orchestra, and even though I feel totally in that spirit, I'm no longer that age.
So let's talk a bit about the programs you bring to Cologne, because you're here in April with two different orchestras, with the Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen and with your orchestra, Philharmonie Zuidnederland. What do you bring to the Kölner Philharmonie? What music?
It's two extremely exciting programs, actually very diverse things, and yeah, I'm thrilled to come with both these orchestras in such a short space. The Deutsche Kammerphilharmonie Bremen are also a very important orchestra for me. This must be our 8th or 9th project together already, and actually the first time we worked together was for a program here in the Kölner Philharmonie. It was the New Year's Eve concert, the Sylvester concert, or New Year's Day, one of the two, 2014, end of 2014. And yeah, it's been a sort of great close partnership ever since. And we've done many different sorts of music together, but this time I chose repertoire that really plays to the soloistic chamber music element of this elite group. And the outer pieces on the program are Schreker's incredible Kammer Symphony that I discovered actually during the pandemic because it's a piece that has the sort of power of a late Mahler symphony, but doesn't involve 120 musicians, but only 23, and happens to be sort of short enough as well. And Strauss is equally amazing from a very similar year. We're talking around 1916 or so. Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme, or Le Bürger als Edelmann. Struggling to switch back to German here. And these two pieces, I'm very passionate about combining Schreker and Strauss because they were obviously contemporaries, and in the beginning of the 20th century were considered like at least equally famous and talented. There were even opera houses in Germany that performed more Schreker than they did Strauss. And it's a sort of tragedy of many composers in history, but Schreker's one of them to fall victim through the anti-Semitic wave that for a long time he left completely forgotten, and only now people are beginning in the last 10 years or so to recognize him as the genius he was. It's fabulous music, fabulous. Wonderful to play, wonderful to listen to. And these two pieces form a frame around another quite unusual piece, Lutosławski's Paroles tissées. Very beautiful piece for solo tenor. We're working with Mark Padmore. I'm very happy. Again, that's someone I've done many nice projects together with over the last few years. Superstar singer. And these are very evocative, abstract, surrealist French songs in Lutosławski's amazing universe. Then a week later, I get to come back, and with my own orchestra for the first time here in Cologne, which we're very happy about. And it's another superstar singer that we have, Magdalena Korzena, who I got to know through Simon Rattle, but we've done things in our own right too. A beautiful program in Poland a few years ago, and with her, we will do a piece written specially for her a couple of years ago by Andrzej Adamek, fabulous composer who I know has been a guest here before, and again is someone I've conducted a few times works of his in the last few years with Ensemble Modern, also in London. I think his fabulous range of colours he achieves. Somehow, this piece, for instance, is a big piece, Where Are You? It's posing very serious religious question, actually, and exploring that sort of philosophical question from the points of view and languages of everything from Aramaic to Sanskrit to Spanish to Czech, Moravian. It's really an eclectic mix, but with his sort of twinkle of humor too. I think he's one of the few composers I know that really achieves humor in music. It's like, you say my eyes are full of joy or something, or playfulness. I feel like he's playing with sounds always, like a child also. It's fantastic music. And she also joins us in the second half to do Ravel's two Hebrew songs, very beautiful. So there's a bit of a French-Czech thing going on. We open with Debussy's beautiful prelude de l'après-midi d'un fond, And we finish with Janacek's epic Rhapsody Taras Bulba, which has been one of my favorite pieces actually since a teenager, when I got to perform it with the National Youth Orchestra in the proms at the Albert Hall. And for that piece I played the organ, and this massive triumphant conclusion with the organ blasting out over the orchestra in that huge space was, something I won't forget.
Wow, that sounds like two very intense programs. If you dive into such a program and into the work with the musicians and the ideas you have in the music, is it hard to leave it behind after the concert? Because you put so much energy and work and hopes and energy in it, and then it's concert evening. And afterwards, you have to leave it behind. And then there's the next week, the next orchestra, the next project. Are you good in leaving something behind?
It's a really good question, and it's one of the hardest things we have to do. It can be such a weird feeling. Usually, for a few hours after the concert, I'm still in that elated mode. But on the plane or the train the next day, to think that thing's over and I'm already into the next thing, and did it exist anyway? I mean, there's sometimes a really surreal thing of we all shared that collective magic, hopefully, in that concert hall that night. Maybe it was broadcast, maybe not, but it just existed for that space of time, and it will remain in some people's memories, but it's not there anymore, and you move on. It's a very strange feeling, and it can be quite a downing feeling. Usually, as you say, you rush on to the next thing, and that sort of masks it. But sometimes, if you have a few days off after a really intense, wonderful experience, it can be, people expect you somehow to be still buzzing and overjoyed that you had this amazing thing, but often it can be quite a lonely time, I miss that great music and that moment. Or you want to go back immediately and do it again and make it even better. It's very true. But it's a beautiful thing, and I think I'm very lucky now, having sort of done this professionally for 13, 14 years, that you can come back to orchestras that you've already built a relationship with and had a good experience before, and then you're going to come back and you work with them again on some different repertoire. And the ultimate of that, of course, is being the chief conductor, and at the moment we're in a patch where I seem to be with them every couple or every few weeks, and to keep going back and knowing these musicians better and better, and having that common understanding already inbuilt and a real sense of trust and adventure is something very beautiful. And that's a very then slightly more positive feeling to think, okay, this program's over, but I see these people again in a few weeks and I can't wait to do this.
And at the moment, the two concerts are still in the future. And there's so much Vorfreude, as we say in Germany,
Genau.
in the Kölner Philharmonie to having you here. I'm really excited to hear the concerts in April. And I thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your patience with my English.
Your English is fabulous.
It was really a pleasure. Thank you so much,
Thanks
Duncan Ward.
Looking forward.
Das war wieder eine Podcast-Folge aus der Kölner Philharmonie. Ich bin Kathy Knees und sage Tschüss und see you soon.